Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Today, we are strapping in for, well, a pretty high-stakes ride.
Uh-huh.
We're connecting the super fast pace of venture-backed startups with the cold, hard realities of cyber
Yeah,
risks.
it's a collision course sometimes. Our sources for this deep dive are, well, quite a stack.
They really are.
We've got everything from detailed penetration testing reports, insider guides to VC funding mechanics,
Right.
all the way to the really chilling financial fallout from a major data breach and, what's happening with the security workforce itself.
So our mission here is to really understand these critical links.
Exactly. For you, the listener, maybe you're a founder gunning for that hypergrowth seed round, or perhaps you're a CISO trying to lock down a Fortune 500 company.
Either way.
Either way, you need to internalize this idea that ambitious growth, it's fundamentally fragile if it's not underpinned by some foundational cyber resilience. Because the security slip-ups that lead to those multi-million-dollar disasters, they're often incredibly basic.
It's kind of shocking sometimes.
It is. And the reason they keep happening, well, it points directly back to strategic business decisions about growth, speed, and crucially, talent.
That's the real tension, isn't it? That's what we're digging into.
Yeah.
We're looking at why, a weak password or maybe an unpatched server, the kind of mistake that seems almost trivial when you're in a 100-hour coding week,
Totally understandable in the moment.
how that can lead directly to that multi-million-dollar disaster that just wipes out all the hard-won traction.
Yeah, years of work gone.
So let's start with the numbers, the cold, hard figures that really define this risk landscape and show exactly what's at stake.
Okay, so if we look at the definitive cost reports, the ones from 2023, the message to any business leader is just stark.
Stark is a good word.
The risk is accelerating, breaches are getting more complex, they're more damaging, and definitely more expensive than ever before.
The big picture numbers, they're just sustained and, frankly, brutal.
Yep.
The average total cost of a data breach hit an all-time high in 2023. We're talking USD $4.45 million.
Wow, $4.45 million.
And that's not some weird one-off spike. It represents a pretty painful 15.3% increase just since the 2020 report average, which was $3.86 million.
So a steady climb.
Yeah, we're seeing this sustained upward trend. It reflects, both the increasing complexity of cleaning up the mess and the growing regulatory cost of getting it wrong.
And when you drill down into the sort of the granular details, you really see why that average is so high.
Right.
The per record cost of compromised data also hit a new high. It's averaging $165 per record.
A record.
Per record. But, and this is key, this is heavily influenced by what kind of data gets lost.
Let me test that.
If you lose, say, generic, non-sensitive stuff, the cost might be lower. But the second customer personal identifiable information, PII, gets involved,
Oh, yeah.
the financial penalty just skyrockets.
CII is the absolute costliest category. It comes in at $183 per record. Employee PII is right behind it at $181 per record.
That difference is significant. It means losing that highly regulated customer data carries just a disproportionate financial risk compared to, say, losing some internal IP.
Yeah, it reflects the high cost of, mandatory notifications, offering credit monitoring services, and then all the lawsuits and regulatory fines that inevitably follow.
Exactly right. So think about it. For a scaling company, maybe one with a rapidly growing customer base, if you lose 50,000 records of customer PII,
Okay.
you are immediately looking at over $9 million in direct costs just related to that data type,
$9 million.
which puts you way over, like double the average cost of a breach we just talked about.
Wow.
That staggering calculation is precisely why data categorization protection strategies, they have to be foundational, like day one stuff.
Okay, so let's say the worst happened. The incident is active. What can an organization actually control at that point to, lessen the damage? Does speed really move the needle when you're already in crisis mode?
Speed is maybe the single most critical actionable variable. It really is.
Okay.
The data shows a massive financial difference depending on how quickly a breach is identified and then contained.
How massive?
Well, breaches resolved in less than 200 days cost, on average, $3.93 million.
Still a lot, but okay.
But if that breach lifecycle drags on beyond 200 days, the cost shoots up by over $1 million to $4.95 million.
$1 million difference just based on time.
Yeah, that's a 23% increase in cost driven purely by delay.
And here's the kicker.
Uh-oh.
The average life cycle for a breach is 277 days.
Oh, wow. So longer than that 200-day mark.
Way longer. So most organizations are already costing themselves that extra $1 million simply because their security operations, their incident response procedures, they're just too slow.
They're reacting, not proactively responding.
Exactly.
And the problem gets worse when you look at how the organization finds out about the breach in the first place.
How do they usually find out?
Well, only about 1/3 of incidents were actually discovered by the organization's own internal security teams or their tools.
Only a third. So 2/3 of the time.
2/3 of the time, the company is reactive. They're finding out from external third parties or, even worse, the attackers themselves.
Ouch. And finding out from the attacker, like getting that ransomware note, demanding payment, and threatening to leak data, that must be the worst case scenario financially.
It carries the absolute steepest penalty. Breaches disclosed by the attacker cost significantly more, averaging $5.23 million.
$5.23 million.
That's nearly $1 million more than incidents found internally, which averaged $4.30 million.
Wow.
And these attacker-disclosed incidents, they also take the longest to contain. We're talking an average of 320 days.
So when the attacker controls the story, the disclosure timeline, the victim just loses control over everything, including the financial bleeding.
Pretty much. And this risk profile, it's especially pronounced in what we call critical infrastructure industries.
Okay, like what?
That category includes things like financial services, technology, energy sectors.
Right, the big ones.
Yeah. Because of the high systemic risk, the intense regulatory scrutiny, the complexity of their systems, data breaches for these critical infrastructure organizations exceeded $5 million on average. They came in at $5.04 million.
Which is what, like $1.26 million higher than other industries?
Exactly, $1.26 million higher.
That context is so important, especially when we think about smaller scaling companies. Maybe they're supplying services to this critical infrastructure sector.
Yeah, the downstream risk.
And our sources show that companies with fewer than 500 employees, they're seeing their average breach costs rise a really painful 13.4% to $3.31 million.
$3.3 million for a small company.
For a small organization that maybe just took on some seed funding, that $3.31 million is often just catastrophic. It's a company-ending event.
Yeah, for a small business, $3.31 million isn't just a high cost. Very often means bankruptcy, plain and simple.
It really shows that even if they're only handling a tiny fraction of the data compared to a Fortune 500 company, the relative risk exposure is just way greater.
It is, and this whole financial reality, it confirms exactly why security leaders, CISOs, they need reliable resources, they need strategic guidance, clear visibility into best practices right from the beginning.
Absolutely.
Which is why we're really thankful for the support of our sponsors, who are dedicated to supporting security leaders navigating this incredibly complex environment. www.cisomarketplace.com and also www.cisomarketplace.services.
Yeah, it's clear that without reliable resources for CISOs and their teams, the odds are just stacked against timely detection and containment. Okay, so let's pivot now. We've seen the cost of failure. Let's talk about the intense pressure of high growth that often leads companies to, frankly, ignore this necessary foundation.
Right. So when we look at the startup world, especially in that high-tech, high-growth space, the entire operational focus is just relentless. It's feature velocity, market penetration, scale, scale, scale.
Get big fast.
Get big fast. And this imperative often clashes directly with the more cautious, deliberative mindset you need for robust cybersecurity.
Let's start right at the beginning of that, the pre-seed phase.
Okay.
This stage is all about being scrappy, growing fast, proving an idea is even viable.
Right. Initial funding sources, they're usually bootstrapping, maybe some angel investors, friends, family, other entrepreneurs kicking in.
Yeah. The friends, family, and fools round
Well,
sometimes.
Yeah. The money is used strictly for just basic operations, maybe setting up a rudimentary accounting system, creating that proof of concept.
And legally. What's the advice there?
Well, the sources generally advise founders to structure as C Corp pretty early on.
C Corp. Okay. Why?
It's not really about immediate taxes. It's mostly about maximizing flexibility for future fundraising from institutional investors, like VCs. They almost exclusively prefer to invest in C Corp.
Gotcha. So it sets you up for later rounds.
Exactly. The main goal here is just minimizing how much equity you give away initially while you're proving the market actually wants your thing.
And there's a key financing tool often used here, right? The safe note.
Ah, yes. The safe note. Simple agreement for future equity. It's popular because it kind of kicks the can down the road on the difficult conversation about valuation until a later, bigger funding round.
Lets the founder focus on building.
Right. But there's a real sort of technical warning flag with these notes.
Oh.
Founders have to use safe notes pretty cautiously because they often introduce something called a valuation cap.
Valuation cap.
Yeah.
What does that do?
Well, if the company does way better than expected between getting that safe note money and raising its Series A round,
Right.
that cap limits how much the early investor's valuation actually increases. So this decision, made when the company is maybe barely an idea, can actually limit future fundraising options and create complexity that VCs will definitely scrutinize later on.
Interesting. Okay, so the company survives pre-seed. They develop a minimum viable product, an MVP,
Yep.
that shows some early positive signals from the market. That signals they're ready for the seed round.
Yeah. That's generally the trigger. This is the first time that formal venture capital firms, often those specialized seed funds, really start paying close attention. Though, crowdfunding is also an option here too.
But there's a huge pitfall highlighted in our sources here, something described as almost always fatal by veteran founders.
Yeah, this one's critical. Taking seed money before achieving genuine product market fit.
Why is that so bad?
Because investors expect that seed funding is going to accelerate a model that's already showing signs of working, not fund the search for a working model.
Ah, okay.
If you take that money and then spend the next 18 months just floundering, trying to figure out what sticks, the pressure to produce results becomes so intense that security is inevitably the first thing that gets cut or delayed indefinitely.
So that seed round milestone, it forces a pretty significant shift in corporate maturity then.
Absolutely, because now VCs are performing serious due diligence. The startup needs like a good attorney. They need errors and omissions insurance.
Yeah.
And crucially, establish books and accounting systems. They need to demonstrate a clear track record of operational and financial health. The informal winging it phase is definitely over.
Okay, this brings us to the core of it, right? The venture capital mindset. This is the engine driving that speed over security trade-off we talked about.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Way out on us.
VCs are fundamentally not interested in creating a nice, small, profitable business. That's not the goal.
No lifestyle businesses for them.
Nope. They are looking exclusively for the moonshot, the outlier, the home run.
So let's say you're running a bootstrap software business.
Mm-hmm.
You're pulling in consistently maybe $10,000 in monthly recurring revenue, MRR. Sounds pretty good, right?
For a bootstrapper, fantastic. But to a VC, that proves basically nothing.
Why not?
That success is too incremental. The question VCs ask isn't, is this operationally efficient or profitable today? It's, can this company realistically hit at least $100 million in annual recurring revenue, ARR?
$100 million ARR.
And eventually achieve, a multi-billion-dollar valuation? Can it become a unicorn?
Right.
The whole VC model is built on betting on these extreme outliers because they know going in that 9 out of 10 of their investments will probably fail or return very little.
So they need that one huge win to cover all the losses.
Exactly. They view the money they inject not really as capital for measured, steady growth, but more as a mechanism for survival.
Survival.
Yeah, to become default alive, as they sometimes say. To have enough cash to survive while the company aggressively chases that big vision moonshot.
And that big vision.
Yeah, big vision demands speed, rapid deployment, often involves complex, quickly evolving technology that might not even be monetized right away.
So this intense pressure to just scale means founders often deliberately choose feature velocity over fixing technical debt.
Makes perfect sense from their perspective sometimes.
They push code out that they know contains vulnerabilities because the perceived cost of fixing it now means delaying a critical market opportunity or maybe missing a key fundraising milestone.
The business imperative to scale just overrides the security imperative to slow down and make things secure.
And that creates the absolute perfect environment for those simple, preventable technical failures we're about to look at next.
Right. So we've established the, frankly, staggering cost of failure and the intense pressure to grow that just makes the risk worse.
Yep.
Now, let's look at the actual levers organizations can pull to try and mitigate those costs. And then let's examine the fundamental technical flaws that keep showing up in the real world.
Okay, let's start with the positive. The strategic cost mitigators. The sources actually quantify the financial benefits of having strong security practices, right? Showing that certain investments can claw back millions in potential losses.
They do, and the figures are pretty compelling. The largest measurable cost difference was tied to how deeply an organization adopted a DevSecOps approach.
DevSecOps. shifting security left.
Exactly. It showed a staggering $1.68 million difference in breach costs between companies with high-level adoption versus low-level adoption.
Wow, nearly $1.7 million in savings just by integrating security checks earlier in the development pipeline.
Incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's not just about tools, right? It's about having a process.
Absolutely. Strong incident response, or IR, planning, combined with regular testing of that plan, that delivered a massive $1.49 million difference in cost mitigation.
So planning and practicing actually pays off, big time.
Huge payoff. And maybe most surprisingly, even something as seemingly basic as dedicated employee training.
Security awareness training.
Yep. That accounted for a $1.5 million difference. It really shows that the technical fixes, the preparation, and the human awareness element are all equally vital pieces of the puzzle.
Okay, so planning, training, DevSecOps. What else moves the needle?
Well, we cannot overlook the sheer power of modern technologies, specifically in addressing that speed problem we identified earlier. Remember the 277-day average life cycle?
Yeah, and the extra $1 million cost for going over 200 days.
Right. Organizations that made extensive use of security AI and automation saw $1.76 million in cost savings compared to those who used none.
$1.76 million from AI and automation. How?
Crucially, that automation delivered its value by accelerating the breach lifecycle by over 100 days.
Over 100 days faster.
Yeah. That speed translates directly into saving that $1.02 million penalty for slow containment we talked about.
So if the average breach takes 277 days and automation can shave off more than 100 of those, that really is the difference between catastrophe and, well, manageable mitigation.
It absolutely is. That ability to rapidly triage, contain, and analyze an incident is just invaluable in those critical moments right after an attack hits.
These insights really underscore the need for smart, automated tools for security professionals, especially since we know they're often manually drowning in thousands of alerts a day.
Totally. Which is why we appreciate the support of sponsors like www.microsec.tools, which helps organizations integrate these necessary efficiencies and hopefully reduce some of that crippling alert volume for the analysts.
Okay, good stuff. Now, let's transition from the macro strategy to the micro-level failures. Let's use those specific anonymous case studies from the penetration test report you mentioned.
Right. These are the kinds of preventable errors that, when you combine them with rapid growth and maybe poor management, lead directly to those multi-million-dollar breaches.
Okay, case study number 1. The system charmingly named Lazy Sadmin.
Yeah. This one is a perfect illustration of how just sheer simplicity leads to total compromise.
How'd they get in?
Full admin access was gained initially by exploiting weak or even non-existent credentials on an SMB server. Basic stuff.
Okay.
But the moment of complete security collapse, the real facepalm moment, came from finding plaintext credentials, literally password 12345 NES,
wow.
exposed in a file named deets.txt, just sitting right there on the web server root.
Oh my God. Deets.txt.
Deets.txt.
Yeah.
It's astonishing, right?
Yeah.
This isn't some complex zero-day exploit. This is a catastrophic failure of basic operational hygiene and change control.
Unbelievable.
And the resulting fix needed was, well, excruciatingly simple. Remove null or guest authentication from the SMB server, immediately delete that deets.txt file.
Please delete the deets.txt file.
And revoke full sudo access from the user named Tadogi, who, armed with password 12345, was easily able to escalate to root privileges.
This case just perfectly shows that the $4.45 million average breach often starts with something laughably cheap and easy to fix. If only someone had looked.
If only. Okay, next case. Lemon squeezy.
Lemon squeezy. Okay.
This one demonstrates the compounding disaster that happens when rapid feature development leads to a massive buildup of technical debt.
How did this one start?
Initial access was gained via brute forcing weak credentials. Again, weak credentials. This time using the enabled XML RPC interface on an outdated WordPress instance, specifically version 4.8.9.
WordPress 4.8.9, isn't that ancient?
Practically fossilized. It hasn't been supported for years and years.
Right.
Relying on this kind of unpatched, obsolete software is a direct consequence of that startup environment, prioritizing new features over basic maintenance.
So they got in through WordPress? Then what?
It was a chain reaction. Once inside, the attacker found another set of weak credentials hidden in a draft blog post.
Seriously. Another process failure.
Yep. Which then allowed them to access phpMyAdmin, where they were able to write a web shell onto the server.
Okay, so web shell means they have code execution.
Pretty much game over at that point, but there was a final insult.
What was that?
Privilege escalation. Getting root access. This was achieved by exploiting a known vulnerable Linux kernel, specifically CVE 2017-16995.
A known kernel vulnerability from 2017.
Yes. So you see the cascade.
Yeah.
Vulnerable system leads to credential exposure, which leads to arbitrary code execution, which leads to total root compromise via an unpatched kernel from years ago.
It's just a perfect storm of technical neglect compounded by a failure to patch basic critical flaws.
Exactly. Okay, third case. The Mercy system.
Mercy. Sounds ominous.
This one is a masterclass in configuration failure. Access started yet again with incredibly weak credentials. This time the user keyed with the password on an SMB server.
Password.
Okay.
But that initial trivial access exposed something interesting. A port knocking configuration file.
Port knocking, that's kind of old school.
It is. But when the attacker successfully executed the sequence described in the file, it opened up SSH and also a new HTTP server on port 80 that wasn't open before.
Wow. So they used the configuration documentation that was meant to secure the system to actually bypass the security controls.
Precisely. Clever, but also points to a fragile setup.
What do they do next?
The attacker then found a local file inclusion vulnerability, an LFI, and some software called RIPS running on that new web server that just opened up.
LFI. This is another classic web vulnerability. It allows reading local files.
Right. It's a basic input validation failure, super common in rapid development environments using older frameworks. This LFI allowed them to read the Tomcat user's configuration file.
Okay, and what was in there?
Application manager credentials.
Game over again. Pretty much. With those application credentials, they could upload a malicious WAR file, get a shell. But even that wasn't the final step to root access.
There's more.
One more step. Final privilege escalation came from a file misconfiguration. A script running as the root user was inexplicably writable by a low-privilege user named Fluffy.
Fluffy. A user named Fluffy could write to a root script.
I kid you not. Fluffy. This allowed the attacker, running as Fluffy, to just inject arbitrary code into that root run script, achieving a root shell.
Wow. These three examples just hammer it home. Multi-million-dollar costs are so frequently triggered by these preventable basic failures rooted in poor security policies, weak access controls, and just chronic patching failures. The deep irony here, listening to those examples, is that every single technical flaw we just discussed, patching that kernel, implementing strong credentials, cleaning up a damn deets.txt file, correcting the permissions on a script owned by Fluffy.
Basic blocking and tackling.
Exactly. It's the core job function of a security professional. Yet, when we look at the state of the cybersecurity workforce, we see this massive strategy gap that seems to prevent enterprises from actually fixing these fundamental issues.
This really is the crux of the whole problem, I think. We talk about a severe talent crisis, but the source material strongly suggests it's largely self-inflicted by the hiring organizations themselves, especially the Fortune 100 companies, the ones holding the most sensitive data.
So where does it start?
Let's start with what the report calls the remote paradox.
The remote paradox, okay.
The demand for highly skilled security professionals is absolutely immense. Everyone agrees on that. Yet only 8% of enterprise cybersecurity roles currently offer remote work.
Only 8% in security. That seems crazy low post-pandemic.
It is. And this policy is actively, demonstrably limiting the talent pool for often no good defensible reason.
And do candidates actually want remote roles?
The preference is undeniable. Our data shows that 43% of those few remote job listings attracted over 100 applicants each. Huge interest.
Okay, so demand is there from candidates.
Massive demand. But now look at the time to fill metric. On-site-only positions are taking nearly 3 times longer to fill than remote or even hybrid roles.
3 times longer.
So, by demanding unnecessary physical presence, companies are strategically handicapping themselves in the war for talent. They're ensuring that critical positions stay open longer, and the backlog of essential fixes, like patching those ancient kernels, just keeps growing.
So inflexibility is hurting them. What else?
This inflexibility is compounded by what we're calling cyber strain, the profound burnout that's impacting the workforce.
Burnout. Yeah, we hear a lot about that in SOCs.
SOC analysts are just drowning. They're manually triaging alert volumes that, in some reports, reach over 11,000 alerts per day, per analyst.
11,000 alerts a day. How is that even possible to manage?
It's not. To put that in perspective, 11,000 alerts means an analyst has less than 20 seconds to review, investigate, and triage each potential threat. assuming they work 2004/7. It's physically impossible.
Yeah, no wonder they're overwhelmed.
More than half of analysts report feeling overwhelmed. And this vicious cycle creates this category the report calls tired rock stars.
Tired rock stars.
Yeah, 59% of highly engaged, top-performing security professionals are experiencing severe exhaustion and are at high risk of just leaving the industry entirely.
Wow. Losing almost 60% of your best people to burnout.
And yet, when enterprises post these incredibly demanding, high-strain jobs, they show a stunning disregard for the root cause of why people are leaving.
How so?
Only 10% of cybersecurity job listings even mention mental health or burnout support programs.
Only 10%.
Compare that to 70% of the same listings that mention basic health insurance.
So they acknowledge physical health, but ignore the mental and operational strain that's driving people away.
Exactly. Enterprises seem focused on treating the symptoms, like turnover, rather than addressing the self-inflicted crisis causing the burnout in the first place.
Okay, so inflexibility, burnout. What about pay? Is that a factor?
This lack of strategic investment in employee well-being is mirrored perfectly by a lack of investment in compensation. And yes, it actively drives top talent away to adjacent fields. The compensation gap is undeniable.
How big is the gap?
Cybersecurity roles in Fortune 100 companies average around $152,700 annually.
Okay.
But adjacent roles that need very similar technical skills, think IT security, DevSecOps, they average $160,800. And the emerging field of observability averages $165,400.
So that's a difference of, what, $8,000 to over $12,000 in average salary right there.
Minimum difference. And that doesn't even touch long-term incentives like stock options or equity.
Equity. How does that compare?
Only 4% of those cybersecurity job postings mentioned equity compensation. Compare that to 15% for observability roles.
15% versus 4%. That's a huge difference in potential upside.
Massive. So think about it from the candidate's perspective. Observability roles, which often deal with performance monitoring, data ingestion, they offer better base pay, significantly more equity potential, and often less acute life or death stress than, say, incident response.
So top talent is just choosing the field that offers better pay, better quality of life, and better long-term wealth creation potential.
It's rational, isn't it? The observability field is attracting people partly because its goals often seem more clearly aligned with business continuity and performance metrics. Their contribution feels less like a pure cost center and more like a revenue enabler compared to traditional security roles.
Okay, so this lack of support for the rank and file connects upwards, right, to maturity issues at the leadership level. The strategy gap starts at the top.
It absolutely does. Our sources reveal that 19%, almost 1 in 5 of Fortune 500 companies, 94 major corporations, still do not have a dedicated CISO, Chief Information Security Officer.
Still, in 2023.
Still. In many of these firms, the CIO, the Chief Information Officer, takes on the combined CIO-CISO role.
And security experts don't like that setup.
They heavily criticize it.
Yeah.
Because it creates an inherent and often insurmountable conflict of interest.
How so?
The CIO's primary mandate is driving IT delivery, getting projects done on time, maximizing budget efficiency for IT operations.
Okay.
So when the security side demands, say, a multi-million-dollar investment in a new alert triage platform like that AI automation we just discussed that saves $1.76 million in the long run,
Right.
the CIO, who might be focused on a massive ERP system migration, may just sideline that security request because it competes for budget and resources with their primary IT goals.
So the CIO is effectively the fox watching the hen house, as the saying goes.
That's the argument. Their primary agenda for operational efficiency often competes directly with the needs of robust, often budget-intensive security and risk management. This structure almost guarantees that security is perpetually viewed as a technical cost center, not as a critical business-enabling function.
And there's one final piece to this leadership puzzle, right? A gap related to AI.
Yeah, this one is really telling. There's a massive critical gap in leadership competency regarding the very tools, AI, and automation that are proven to help solve the burnout problem and save money.
What's the gap?
We saw that AI and automation deliver huge cost savings. They accelerate containment by over 100 days. It's clearly important.
Right.
While 46% of rank and file, hands-on cybersecurity roles now mention needing AI experience. 0%. Zero. Of director level or higher leadership jobs require it.
0% of leadership roles require AI experience, while almost half the practitioner roles do.
Exactly. That disparity is just a profound strategic failure.
Huh.
The people responsible for setting this security strategy, allocating those multi-million-dollar budgets, approving the large-scale technology investments, they lack the foundational knowledge of the key technology they're supposed to be leveraging to reduce alert volume, combat analyst burnout, and achieve those potential $1.76 million cost savings.
Wow, so it's a management failure to keep pace with the technical demands and opportunities of the current risk landscape. Hashtag how trouble.
So, yeah. We have covered a huge amount of ground today. We've analyzed the intense pressure high-growth companies are under and the absolutely devastating financial consequences when security fails.
We really have. We've seen that the average cost of data breach is at an all-time high, over $4.45 million. And that speed of detection, often supercharged by automation, is just critical to mitigating that cost.
And we saw how the pressure of chasing that $1 billion moonshot pushes scaling companies to prioritize feature velocity over those foundational security measures.
Right. And critically, the resulting technical failures. I mean, from plaintext passwords in deets.txt to ancient unpatched kernels and trivial misconfigurations, like a script named Fluffy having root permissions.
Never forget Fluffy.
Never forget Fluffy. They reveal that these multi-million-dollar costs are so frequently triggered by basic preventable errors that shouldn't be happening.
And the core issue, the connection we wanted to draw, is that the talent crisis, which is driven by low relative compensation, high cyber strain, inflexibility about remote work, and often poor leadership structure, that crisis directly prevents enterprises from hiring and retaining the professionals they need to fix those foundational security issues in the first place.
So the organization fails to support its people.
Which results in persistent, basic, and increasingly expensive technical vulnerabilities. It's a vicious cycle.
Okay, so what does this all mean for you listening right now, whether you're trying to secure a startup or leading security at a large enterprise? Here is the final provocative thought we want to leave you with today.
Go for it.
The perceived cybersecurity talent shortage. It isn't really a lack of available people or skills out there in the world. It is fundamentally a profound, strategic, and largely self-inflicted failure of organizational management.
That's a strong statement, but I think the data backs it up. Enterprises are failing to align compensation, things like long-term incentives, equity, and just basic quality of life factors, specifically addressing cyber strain and inflexible work models. They're failing to align those with the truly mission-critical value that these security professionals deliver every single day.
And the consequence.
If you don't support your people, if you don't value them appropriately, they will inevitably leave. They'll go to adjacent fields like observability or DevSecOps that offer better pay, healthier work environments, and frankly, more respect.
Leaving your organization fundamentally vulnerable to those basic, expensive, and entirely preventable errors like password 12345 in deets.txt.
Exactly. Solving a technical challenge really begins with solving the talent challenge. It's about people and strategy first.
A perfect note to end on. A huge thank you to our listeners for joining this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
And we want to thank our sponsors one last time for supporting our exploration of these critical challenges. www.cisomarketplace.com, www.citomarketplace.services, and www.microsec.tools.
Their support is invaluable.
Absolutely. We'll see you on the next deep dive.